Some of the things we're about to hear about blacks in the 1930s will not be so pretty, but it needed to be said. And Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois felt like it was his responsibility to say it. And as always, he presents it with the best intention of never trying to tear people down, but only trying to open up their eyes. So let's read what he had to say by going into his 1940 autobiography titled Dusk of Dawn. PDF linked down below. Service. This low social condition of the majority of Negroes is not solely a problem of the whites. What is meant by social condition? That's a group's overall standing in society. It's based on factors such as quality and access to health care, education, and employment, but it also includes other factors like respect, cultural norms, behavior, and group morale. Now, according to Dr. Du Bois, Negroes lived under a low social condition, one not solely the responsibility of whites to fix. A question of historic guilt in slavery and labor exploitation and of present discrimination. It's not just about whites feeling guilty over slavery or their continued practice of discrimination against blacks. Meaning fixing their low social condition does not depend on the moral conviction of whites. It is not merely a matter of the social uplifting of an alien group within their midst, a problem of social contact and political power. It's not just about whites giving a helping hand, integrating with blacks, or providing political power. He's saying that all these things are fine, but they don't deal with the root of the issue, and neither can they. Why not, you may ask? Here's the answer. Howsoever it may be thus rationalized and explained, it must be, at any current moment, primarily an inner problem of the Negro group itself. That issue can only be fixed by doing the inner work. Yes, the Europeans and white Americans destroyed the mind in slavery and forced Negroes into thinking and behaving in a counterproductive way. But that damage had already been done, and no amount of making whites feel guilty, them giving out handouts, and providing political concessions can fully repair that, because it's primarily an inner problem at this point. This is what he's saying. A condition from which they themselves are prime sufferers, and a problem with which this group is forced itself to grapple. And when you really get to the root of black frustration and resentment, when you understand deep down in there, you find out that it really stems from knowing that there's a problem, but not wanting to face the problem because of how much individual and collective effort it would take. The alternative is to blame, which is much easier in the short term. But in the long run, people still end up in the same spot because the shadow self isn't going anywhere. No matter what the true reasons are or where the blame lies, the fact remains that among 12 million American Negroes, there are today poverty, ignorance, bad manners, disease, and crime. It doesn't matter if the white man enslaved the ancestors and how they destroyed the mind and culture of a people, because nothing can be done to change that. The fact is, according to Dr. Du Bois, that American Negroes experience poverty, ignorance, bad manners, disease, and crime. So blaming and making people feel guilty wasn't going to do anything to change these circumstances. A determined fight has been made upon Negro ignorance, both within and without the group, and the results have been notable. Assistance from both black and white teachers, and philanthropists in creating schools and providing education. Nevertheless, this is still an ignorant people. 1 in every 6 Negroes 10 years of age and over admitted in 1930 that he could not read and write. And this has increased significantly since this time, which shows improvement in this category. Blacks became much more academically educated as the years went on, and that is progress. In the South, not 1/2 the colored children from 5 to 16 are regularly in school, and the majority of these schools are not good schools. The teachers, the buildings, the curriculum, and the environment in general was just not good. Any poor, ignorant people hurted by themselves, filled with more or less articulate resentment, are bound to be bad-mannered, for manners are a matter of social environment, and the mass of American Negroes have retrograded in this respect. He's saying that blacks went backwards in their manners. Bad-mannered meaning rude, disrespectful, loud, hostile. He attributed this retrograde to their environment. There has been striking improvement in the Negro death rate. It was better than that of most South American countries, of Italy, Japan, and Spain even before the war. Nevertheless, it is still bad and costly, and the toll in tuberculosis, pneumonia, heart disease, syphilis, and homicide is far too high. The tuberculosis and pneumonia were due to overcrowding, poor housing, and customs. The heart disease was due to stress and poor diet. The syphilis was mainly from relations. And the through-the-roof homicide rates were due to weak problem-solving skills and a low threshold for lethal violence. And what I mean by that is everyone is capable of killing. And there is some threshold that once it's crossed, then the response warrants the use of lethal violence. Whether that's some man that has done something to abuse a child, or someone has broken into your home and you need to protect your family, or someone is about to kidnap your child, and I can go on and on. But there is some threshold where you will do it. And it varies person to person and from group to group. But when it comes to the blacks, they have had members in there with a very low threshold for lethal violence and will kill for things that most people would not. That's one of the reasons they get the gold medal every year for the most homicides in America. Owing someone $10 could be enough to get you killed. Bumping into someone by accident could get a person killed. Looking at a person the wrong way could get you killed. As a matter of fact, when I was 16, I was with my best friend at the time, and we were riding the city bus back home. It was probably 11 at night, inner city Vegas. We're riding down Washington Avenue. And when we got on the bus, we sat in the back, and there was this guy back there with a black hoodie on who was about the same age as us. Now, it was only a few people on the bus because it was late at night. But my guy, he sat all the way in the back on the opposite side to where this guy was. And I sat a few seats further up. Now, the back seats where the guy was at and where my friend was at, those faced forward. And the seats in front of them faced inside toward the bus. So I could turn my head slightly and I could see the guy. And I glanced over a few times at him because it looked like something was wrong with him. And I was trying to see if he was good. Now, I was never the type of person who looked at people with the brown skin as the enemy. I never had that type of energy on me, although I knew a lot of people who did. And apparently, this guy was one of them. Because he took me glancing over at him as some type of challenge. And he responded by saying, "What's the business?" Now, I couldn't really hear him when he said it the first time. So I asked him, I said, "What'd you say?" But it wasn't in a confrontational way. It was just in a curious way because I really didn't hear him. Then he said it again. And this time I could kind of make out the words, but I didn't see the intent. I couldn't see any intent. It didn't look ill. So I figured that since my intent was good, that his was also. So what's the business to me sounded like, "What's good with you?" Like a greeting. So I responded. I said, "I'm good. What's up with you?" Like a greeting in return. Then he said, "Oh, all right." And I'm thinking, okay. And I left it alone. Then the next stop, it was his stop. We're on Washington and Martin Luther King, home of the ghetto blacks. The projects are right over there. Then after he got off the bus, my boy came over to me quickly and he said, "You didn't hear what he said?" He said, "What's the business?" Like, what's up? You got a problem? Then he told me that he saw the dude reach his hand in the hoodie pocket and put his hand on a gun that he had in there. So you have to imagine how wild it could have went if I heard what he really said and I was an aggressive person. It could have easily turned into an argument. Oh, meet me off on this stop right here. Okay, let's get off. What's up? Boom, boom, boom. You got shooting happening. It happens just like that. Foolish stuff. Good thing that I've never been that way, because it could have easily got wild. Now, my boy who was with me, he was the aggressive type. He was that type of person. Full-fledged gang member and everything. But being around me helped him tone down a lot. Because he used to be just like that dude who was on the bus, with a low threshold for lethal violence. And there are many members in the Black community who have this type of low threshold for lethal violence. And that's why Dr. Du Bois said the homicide rate was too high. It is hard to know just what the criminal tendencies of the American Negroes are, for our crime statistics are woefully inadequate. We do know that in proportion to population, 3 times as many Negroes are arrested as whites. But to what extent this measures prejudice and to what extent antisocial ills, who shall say? Many of these ought never to have been arrested. Most of them are innocent of grave crimes. He doesn't believe a lot of them actually did the grave crimes. And he believed that prejudice policing and false accusations were in part to blame. That's why he stated the crime statistics were woefully inadequate. So he's covering for the blacks, and he's providing some type of rationale as to why they were arrested so much. But the transgression of the poor and sick is always manifest among Negroes. Disorder of all sorts, theft and burglary, fighting, breaking the gambling and liquor laws, and especially fighting with and killing each other. The especially fighting and killing each other goes back to what he previously mentioned about the homicide being too high. So he acknowledges that these things were happening in the Black community, although he is suspicious as to the arrest rates and crime statistics accurately reflecting the reality. Above all, the Negro is poor by heritage from 244 years of chattel slavery, by emancipation without land or capital, and by 75 years of additional wage exploitation and crime peonage. Sudden industrial changes like the Civil War, the World War, and the spree in speculation during the 20s have upset him. The Negro worker has been especially hard hit by the current depression, referring to the Great Depression beginning in 1929. Of the nearly 3 million Negro families in the United States today, probably the breadwinners of 1 million are unemployed, and another 1 million on the lower margin of decent subsistence. Assuming a gradual restoration of fairly normal conditions, it is probable that not more than 2% of the Negro families in the United States would have an income of $2,500 a year and over, while 58% would have incomes between $500 and $2,500, meaning most would have been poor at the time, very poor, and only 2% would have been near or above middle class. This social degradation is intensified and emphasized by discrimination, inability to get work, discrimination in pay, improbability of promotion, and more fundamentally, spiritual segregation from contact with manners, customs, incentives to effort despite handicaps. So not only were blacks discriminated against and kept in low-paying jobs, they were also cut off from things that inspired people to get ahead, cut off from the cultural atmosphere that incentivizes people to push further. By outer pressure in most cases, Negroes must live among themselves, neighbors to their own people in segregated parts of the city, in segregated country districts. The segregation is not complete, and most of it is customary rather than legal. Nevertheless, most Negroes live with Negroes, in what are on the whole the least pleasant dwelling places, although not necessarily always bad places in themselves. This means that Negroes live in districts of low cultural level, that their contacts with their fellow men involve contacts with people largely untrained and ignorant, frequently diseased, dirty and noisy, and sometimes antisocial. And this type of environment is what reinforces certain behaviors. The atmosphere is energizing those type of behaviors, and it makes it difficult for anyone to do anything other than this. So it's a trap. because that type of behavior didn't promote a good reputation and it diminishes ambition. These districts are not usually protected by the police, rather victimized and tyrannized over by them. That's why he was suspicious about the crime stats, because you had police arresting people who were likely innocent in many cases. But there was still no way to really tell. No one who does not know can realize what tyranny a low-grade white policeman can exercise in a colored neighborhood. He could wreak all types of havoc. The police, especially some of the low-grade Irish American police, were known to abuse Negroes who weren't doing anything worthy of the abuse. And they could and did put false charges on Negroes with the quickness. And nothing could be done about it. This is one of the reasons blacks developed such a bad relationship with the police, because the history of police and Negroes is filled with corruption. It's not clean. Take Negroes in for what they actually did. Don't put fake charges on them, right? Play the game fair. In court, his unsupported word cannot be disputed, and the only defense against him is often mayhem and assassination by black criminals, with resultant hue and cry. City services of water, sewerage, garbage removal, street cleaning, lighting, noise and traffic regulation, schools and hospitalization are usually neglected or withheld. Saloons, brothels, and gambling seek these areas with open or tacit consent. No matter in what degree or in what way the action of the white population may increase or decrease these social problems, they remain the present problems which must be faced by colored people themselves and by colored people of widely different status. And they should have wanted to face those problems themselves, and a lot of them did, because that's how you gain self-respect and a sense of independence. So now we can see some of the views that Dr. Du Bois held regarding the situation of Negroes coming into the 1940s. There was still a lot to be fixed, and it could only be done by Negroes themselves. So we're going to stop right here, and we're going to pick up with some more in this chapter in the next commentary. And so I thank you for your time and attention. My name is Brooklyn St. Michael, and I'll see you in the free world.